Okay, hello and welcome. Um, I am here today to briefly talk to you about how to present qualitative sections. And I think we need a kind of bit of practical background to this. And I think it's quite interesting. So Rose Barber, in what, a long time ago now, tells us that qualitative research was a relatively small group of consenting academics, she says, around 30 years ago. However, there's been a sea change over the past 15 years, and she was talking about that in 2008. And she tells us that qualitative research has rapidly established itself with a broad range of disciplines. So there's a kind of context that actually qualitative research has grown even within my own career. I mean, I've been doing this stuff for 20 something years. We've seen a kind of slow normalization of it. However, when it comes to grants, and I'll talk about this in a sec, qualitative research is generally part of the kind of broader mixed methods thing. So we may have kind of grown in kind of status in terms of people want us to be part of the grants, they want qualitative research in part of those kind of things, but actually the amount of words we're giving in these applications are minimal. So I've given you a couple of examples. This is a recent RFPB that went in. I wrote a draft of what the qualitative section should look like, and that was 580 words. And bearing in mind, I've been doing this for 20 years, I've now got that down. When I first started out, the kind of sections I was writing were about 2,000 words, those kind of things. And so I've got it down. And then in the actual stage one application, I had 240 words to describe all the qualitative elements of that project out of the 3,000 words within the whole of that stage one application. And here's another example. Can I go back? Yeah, in an HTA, so health technology assessment. The first application, I had a grand total of 705 characters, which is about 100 words to explain a work package, a qualitative work package that was part of a broader set of things that involved me employing one RA full-time for 2.5, 3 years. So 100 words. And in the stage two application, they turned around and said, can we have a bit more detail? Understandably, I was given a bit more space, but still only 530 words. So this is all done within a context. And what you'll see, other people who've been talking about how they describe RCTs or stats or whatever it is, generally, we've all got quite restricted number of words, and qual is the one that often gets squashed. So if we think about it, how practically is qualitative research embedded in the kind of NIHR and other kind of grant bodies that you might want to go to? It's quite rare for it to be standalone qualitative research. It's not unusual. Actually, I've been involved in various ones, but actually for lots of funders, you're going to find it's going to be part of a mixed methods project. Even when I say standalone, yeah, these days, the mixed methods, there might be a systematic review, there might be some surveys, there might be a scoping review, and clearly there's going to be loads of PPI work. But actually, that's much more routine, that kind of embedded with, be it a review, be it a survey, be it alongside an RCT, or around intervention development, where you might be doing co-design workshops and other kind of things around that. So a lot of the time, normally, you're talking about kind of mixed method stuff. And actually, it's involved in building up ideas around something, often for kind of randomized controlled trials or intervention developments, or actually process evaluations, and qualitative process evaluations running alongside a trial. And if we think about it, there's kind of only really a kind of core set of elements that we can focus on. I mean, there's various lists that happen, but we can think about it in this way, that actually, when you're putting in why this is involved, you're exploring the unexplored, identifying kind of core issues, understanding what's routinely going on, or explaining associations or contradictory stuff. And actually, yeah, and I've given you some examples there around what that would look like around the kind of questions. If you're exploring the unexplored, how do people actually recruit unconscious patients in emergency research, which is part of an application I was involved in. And it is quite carefully is the answer to that, but actually exploring practically what's the work that goes on because we didn't really know in detail. People were doing it, but we didn't have a kind of rich description of what was going on. Then equally identifying key issues. So what are patients' information requirements for participation in a trial? That's kind of more the preparatory work kind of stuff that's going on. And actually for ongoing kind of things, understanding current practice and explaining associations and contradictions, which is the kind of routine thing that actually, if you're going to be doing qualitative research, it's generally going to be mixed methods, and you're going to be bringing different data sets together to try and make sense of them. So there's always those kind of contradictions and associations. And given we're in the age of kind of, randomized controlled trials are key. They often recruit really badly, or cohort studies. Lots of our jobs is about, okay, how do we engage people more with them? What more do they want to engage with them or learn about them? Okay, why isn't this moving on? Yeah, okay, so if we think about the actual sections of the form, you're going to have generally a short section, or if you're lucky, if it's standalone, quite a long section, but you're still going to have these core elements that need to be in there. You're going to have enough words to roughly describe somewhere your objective. It's probably going to be a sub-objective of the kind of broader study. And actually, I'll answer the questions afterwards, Alison. I'll come back to that. It's generally going to be a kind of an objective. You're going to have 2, 3, or 4, depending on what's going on. But I'll just give you an example: to identify and explain barriers and facilitators, to set up recruitment and trial processes, which is pretty typical for loads of that kind of stuff. So you need to kind of be, so you've got some keywords there: identify and explain, barriers and facilitators, which is quite old language these days. We probably describe determinants around those kind of things. Then you want to think about the kind of design element of it. You're going to turn around and say, you're going to give it a name. This is an interview study. This is a serial interview study. This is going to be focus groups. This is going to be a mixed methods, qualitative work, whatever it is. And then you unpack slowly in very few words, practically what you're going to be doing. So you're going to be undertaking interviews with people, give them the rough numbers. Those refusing, give them enough numbers for this example. Or it might be, we're going to be undertaking ethnographic fieldwork in 3 hospital sites, and we're going to spend a month in each hospital site and each ward. And then you need to unpack, again in a few words, we will focus on topic X, Y, or Z. So you're trying to give the reviewer a kind of a vague insight into what the focus is going to be. You can't cover everything. You haven't got the words. It's like, what are the really key elements? And obviously these things need to align. The kind of what you've said in your objective needs to align with what you're going to focus on, and equally why you're recruiting those kind of people. Equally, there's something interesting about, you need to put in the sample, and you've only got, given you've only got certain words, given you've only got a certain thing, you kind of, you need to do this in the shortest route possible. So you've already given some numbers as indications. And what I'd always say in this is the numbers offered are indications of what we're going to be doing. We will, given what we find, we will adjust our sampling accordingly. And that's the kind of thing that you may or may not have space for. But actually, your sampling strategy is informed by what? Past work, other literature in this field, what you know, what your theory says you should be focusing on, what your those other kind of things. So think about, describe your sampling strategy. What is it informed by? And generally, it's going to be past literature, past work in this area, the knowledge within the team, the knowledge on the site, on the ground, those kind of things. And then refer to, we will use X type of sampling. If it's going to be convenience sampling, which is roughly desperation sampling, anyone that would say so, or if we're going to do criterion sampling, which is much more routine, which is, I need some of those, some of those, some of those. I mean, in technical terms, I would argue, irrespective of what anyone else says, that all qualitative research is kind of tied up. It's got to be, we've got to have a really sharp attitude about why we're choosing, who we're choosing, and we've got to be kind of be very specific around that kind of stuff. And it's not good enough to try and say, I'm going to do a maximum variation sampling covering age, gender, ethnicity, and other kind of things, when you've only got a sample of maybe, I don't know, 20 people. And actually the phenomena at centre has got nothing to do with age or gender. Actually, so it's really thinking about tying your sampling criteria why you're going to sample X, Y, and Z tied to the issues at hand. Because let's say it's about, I don't know, young people and their views of technology. I'd want to be sampling around maybe some variation around ages, but actually different engagements with technology levels. So those people that are really use their mobile phones every day, those that don't have one or rarely use one. So those are the kind of sampling criteria you need to think about. And this is what's key as a reviewer, and I do review a lot of these things. It's like, you're just saying this because you think I want to hear it. Actually, you need to think through and kind of align those kind of things. And equally, so you've got the aim, you're going to have a kind of line or an objective. You're going to have a more substantive section, which is going to be on your design. I'm going to do interviews. I'm going to interview these kinds of people, and this is what I'm going to focus on. You're going to have a brief section on sampling. This is what it's informed by. This is what the kind of core set of ideas I'm going to be drawing on. Then you're going to be talking about how and what and why you're doing analytically. So, for example, I've put a contemporaneous field notes from non-participant observation will be edited to assure anonymity of participants. So you say something about interview transcripts. They're going to be transcribed, edited, and anonymized, those kind of things. And then equally, you tell people, okay, you're going to undertake a specific type of analysis. Now, reviewers really like to know you're doing X or Y or Z, even if you don't end up doing it. There's something about this kind of, people need to know you're doing thematic analysis, or you'll need to doing grounded theory. Well, actually, very few people do grounded theory. And unless you use the right keywords, you're describing memos and other kind of things. I know you're not as a reviewer, but it's about being specific. And it's fine to turn around and say, I'm doing X. And then you don't need to detail all the procedures of it. You haven't got enough words. You can't turn around and say, I'm going to do framework analysis. There's 5 stages. It's going to be X, Y, and Z. There's not enough words. Equally, if you've got enough words, or equally that's the way you're interested in, you can turn around and say that actually it's theoretically informed by X or Y. You might have enough space to talk about issues around validity and reliability. So you might say, I'm going to send the transcripts back to people. I'm going to do some member validation, or you might turn around and say that actually I'm going to do some group data sessions where we're going to discuss those things. And you may or may not have enough space to describe kind of issues around how stakeholders, and that may include PPIE people, are involved in any of the analysis or any of the data collection or any of those kind of things. Finally, there's going to be some other sections of the forms that you need to think about. So that's about your experience, because somewhere you need to say, because we all do it as reviewers and we all write it, who is the qualitative expert? And you see it every now and again on some applications that no one is the qualitative expert, and they're just going to go and do qualitative research. And years ago, when I was starting out in life, I had people come to my office and say, I want to do some qualitative research. Can you give me the paper to read so I can go and do it? Luckily, we don't live in that kind of world generally, but someone needs to demonstrate some kind of expertise. And one of the ways you do that is by recent relevant publications or other kind of things. Now, this is the paper, and I deliberately wanted that paper to be named Sampling Strategies in Qualitative Research. This was part of an edited collection by Fleck, the Sage Handbook of Qualitative Data Analysis. But it's even like being a bit artful about what papers you choose that offer up evidence that actually you know something about qualitative research. So it's thinking about how you name your papers, and equally which papers you draw on when you're referencing in these kind of things. And there's no problem if no one on the grant's got expertise in qualitative research, but you turn around and say, we will have a mentor who's got experience in qualitative research, who may or may not be paid, who can support the kind of process. But you just need to be explicit that you're getting some expert support and advice around these kind of things. And then finally, we come to costings, which is kind of your time. Now, I would always say, and this is always eaten up, and I'm sure there's been talked about elsewhere, people want more for less always in these grants, because the funding envelopes are generally very tight. Your time, if you're going to be leading this, is going to be a minimum of 5%. And then you're going to need a researcher. Or if you are the researcher, you need to be utterly realistic about what's doable. And that's not about, you can't run a project, you can't collect data and do decent analysis on 20%. It's got to be a decent amount of things. Other bits of the money are going to go towards transcription, as well as travel, which that may or may not be relevant these days, as I think more and more data collection is going to be online. And then kind of payments that may or may not happen. Very few elements of my work are involved in payments. Obviously we pay PPIE kind of stuff, but actually payments to participants and or practitioners is quite rare these days. Then you're going to be thinking about an encrypted recorder, but often funders are unwilling to spend on those because actually your organization should already have one. That's true for a software license and or a laptop. So those are the kind of core elements that we've got here. Okay, so, let me just go back. Yeah, okay, I'll end on that.